Hi, this is Dave Castle with another video in my series about using Roxy to build MarkLogic applications. In this video, I'm going to take a look at how you can use Roxy to build and deploy service extensions to MarkLogic's REST API. The REST API was released in MarkLogic 6, and as of 7, we can search, we can do CRUD operations on full documents, or we can do more surgical updates. We can get values, we can run Sparkle queries, we can add and delete triples, we can even configure the MarkLogic instances themselves, all through the REST API. When you're using the REST API in MarkLogic 7 and you think you can't do what you need, your first step should probably be to come to this page and review the documentation to see if maybe there's a way that you just hadn't found it. But if there really isn't a way, there is an extension mechanism built in to the API, and Roxy's got a few tools to help you work with that. In order to have something to play with, let's set up an application. So I'm going to create a project here. So the new command is reaching out to GitHub, downloading the latest version of the Roxy framework, the deployer specifically. And now I'm going to cd into that directory. And now I'm going to deploy the source code. So at this point, if I take a look at my my admin API, we'll see I've got my app servers and databases and such like. All right, so having deployed the code, and there's no actual source code in this application yet, but I have deployed the REST API configuration. So I can now take a look at that. And this is just going to show me the REST API extensions that have been deployed. Of course, there's nothing there yet because we haven't built anything yet. Okay, so let's suppose we've thought of some kind of an extension that we want to write. I'm not going to try to come up with a realistic example right now. I'm just going to do a little toy one, but that should be sufficient to show what we're trying to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to ask Roxy to create a new extension for me. So with this command, it's going to create an extension called Castle, and it's going to use this DMC, my initials, to be the namespace prefix for the modules, for the functions in that library module. Let's go take a look at what we have now. Alright, so here's our basic project, and the REST API directory gets built for us by Roxy, and underneath that there's an ext directory for extensions, and here's the file that Roxy created for us. You'll note it is a library module, and it's got a function in here for each of the HTTP verbs. So we've got get, put, post, and delete. Of course there are other verbs, but those are the ones that we're going to focus on. So what you can do is you can take advantage of what Roxy provides and just go in and start editing. You don't have to worry about making sure your overall structure is right. Just to do an example of that, to show that we're getting something that starts us off in a good place, I'm going to take another look at this page here, which again shows us the extensions that have been deployed. We'll notice now that the Castle extension is out there, and we're provided the URL where we can hit that extension. The REST API also lists out the individual verbs that are supported by this particular extension. So to install a resource extension requires a curl command applied to a particular REST endpoint. An example of that is here in the documentation. I find it a lot easier to not have to do that personally. So what happens when you do the deploy modules is that Roxy builds that curl command for you, executes it against the right place, and there you go. Now you might wonder, why can't I just put my extension under the source directory and have it deployed like the rest of my code? The reason for that is that that curl command puts your extension into a particular place. So for instance, when we come into Query Console and take a look at the modules database here, we can see that my resource extension has been turned into this. So it's castle.xqi became resource.xqi, but it's in a particular place that includes the name. And there's also some metadata that describe it. So rather than having to worry about that, we just let Roxy do the curl command for us. Alright, so for our next step, we're going to edit this extension and make some updates to make it do something. So first, I'm going to clear out a couple of these functions that we're not actually going to use. I'm going to delete the get and the delete. Doesn't hurt to leave these in, of course. It just, makes it easier to concentrate on the code here. So now I'm focusing on the post function. The parameter in this function that I'm going to care most about is the params parameter. It's a map, and anything I want to pass to the extension is going to go through there. Now, I took the liberty of setting up some stuff ahead of time to make this a little easier for myself. So I'm going to replace this stuff with some HTML. And I'm also going to replace the output type with text HTML. So now we can see that I'm just simply returning a div that's got a couple other divs in it, and I'm calling this map get request as get params quest and favorite color. So that's going to pull values from here. Now, one interesting thing, I'm going to go ahead and deploy this again, and then we're going to take another look at this page. And we're going to see that this has been updated to reflect the fact that we're now only supporting the post method. You can imagine this being useful to a downstream developer who's going to make use of your extension. They can come here, take a look at it, and see that this extension supports the post method. That's the only one. They know how to call it. On the other hand, I'm referring to a couple parameters in here, and this does not reflect those parameters. So that downstream developer right now would have to look at my xquery code to figure out what it is that they need to pass in. Well, we can do better than that. So what we're going to do is use this line here, which is it's an xquery annotation, and we're going to tell it, we're going to specify what the parameters are. So here we've got, let's see, quest, which is a string, and we've got favorite color, which is another string. So now when I deploy again, Roxy's going to see that annotation, and it's going to parse it out and use that as part of the curl command, so that when we get back to this page, the post command is now automatically documented as having these two parameters, both of which are strings. So at this point, the downstream developer working with our API extension does not need to read any code. They can just take a look at this and know what they need to pass in. Okay, so that's good, but we need something to actually call this. So I'm going to add another file in here. Ta-da. Okay, so in this file, I'm just doing a really simple jQuery call, making an AJAX call to my new resource, telling it that it's a post, and I'm passing in a couple of parameters. A really important thing to note here is this rs colon in front of my parameter names. That is required. If you don't do that, if we leave the RS off, then your parameters will not be picked up. It's not going to trigger an error or anything. Just one of those things you got to do. So we're going to send the request. When we get the response back, we're just going to shove it right into this div up here. And hence that's why we're returning some HTML content. Okay, so once again, let's deploy. Now I'm going to go to this page, and there it is. So when we do this again, we can see the castle extension here. This is the same URL we saw when we looked in here. We're sending a post command, and we've got the parameters that we decided to send, and the response that comes back is the HTML that we specified in the extension. Okay, so that pretty much covers the topic. Hope this was informative, and I'll see you with the next one.